Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will learn from personal stories and explore thought-provoking topics, all with one goal in mind: living a more purposeful life. Welcome, everybody, to episode 176 of the On Purpose podcast. Super grateful to have you here. And this week, it's kind of a series I've been on. It started a little over a month ago with Ryan Chartrand and then Kate Kimball. And it's kind of fun to see life going full circle for me and people in my inner circle. And that is, a lot of these folks were students of mine or mentees of mine or people I helped coach. And they followed advice. Quite honestly, they probably didn't listen to a lot of my advice, which is really, really good. But they listened to some, and they're making changes in their life, and they're living life with more purpose, and they're moving forward and not just accepting a status quo. And I love it because this week's guest is also one of those folks. It's a young man I actually know very, very well because I did his background investigation back when he was trying to become a police officer where I worked. So I got to know him better than most, and we've become really good friends over the years, and I'm super proud of all the changes he's made in his life and the courage and the fire he lives life with every day and the passion he brings to those around him. So I'm excited this week for you guys to hear from my good friend, Cole Zempel, and see where he's going with life and why he's doing what he's doing. Hope you enjoy the episode. My man, Cole, what is going on and how you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, Jerrod. How's the outdoors treating you?
That's good, bro. That's good, man. It's Sturgis Rally Week, bro. So it's some interesting characters rolling through our neighborhood. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, just talked to Tom Blair the other day, and he said he was thinking about making a trip up to Sturgis. And then he goes, then I looked it up and I saw it was Rally, and I said, no, probably not the time for me to be up there.
Yeah, the only downside, Andrew and I were going to get the night off the other night from the brewery because they pretty much got us working every day to go see Snoop Dogg.
I heard that was a big deal up there.
He canceled.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Snoop, but so I don't know, man. Yeah, it's good. Life is good. Life is good. How is things going for you? You got big things going on, taking on a new wrestling program, which I'm excited to kind of talk about today, especially of the little things you're going to do to instill a culture and what it means to be the first coach in a high school history program. Like, think about that. You'll always be part of their history.
Yeah, it's kind of wild when you start like really thinking about it. Yeah, lots of exciting stuff. I don't know. We're just busy. We're wrapping up a house edition, and then I just got this position at the local school, Wellington High School, as the head wrestling coach. And it's going to be this town hasn't had a high school since 1960 or 62, something like that, early 60s, and they've got it back. And I think they've wanted one.
Yeah.
Wellington they've been like clamoring for a high school again, and now that they have it, they are all in. Like football camp, the football coach had to call me and said, hey bro, we had 120 kids show up to this football camp that we had earlier this summer. I need some extra coaches. We were not ready for 120 kids to show up. so I got to help with that, and then we ran our own wrestling camp, and we had close to 80 some kids for that. I mean, I just think, like I said, everyone is very, very excited to get these programs up and going. And fortunately for me, wrestling is one of the big ones. So, yeah, very excited to be a part of it. And like you said, get the chance and opportunity to set that culture.
Yeah, for sure. And it's bigger than wrestling. You're going to be impacting young people's lives at one of the most critical times in their development. But before we get to that first part, Cole, you know how this goes, man. Like, we got to warm up, dude. I don't just get you in here and start going 2-minute goes right off the bat. You won't make it very long.
Right.
I got to warm you up. All right, Cole, here we go. You know the deal. Cole is a longtime member of our community and somebody I've wanted to have on for a long time. So I'm pretty sure he knows most of these warm-up questions. But There may be a curve in here. I don't know. I'm see how I'm feeling tonight.
All right, all right.
All right, Cole, you're stranded on an island. You get one food. What are you eating the rest of your life?
Bro, this one has stressed me out for since I've started listening to your podcast because I'm like, damn, if I ever get on there, what am I gonna say? Like, I mean, I've been in some dark times with my ways of cutting weight when I was younger. And so there was some times where I wasn't probably eating the best things, but man, I don't know. But then I thought about it today a little bit and I said, what can I just eat and eat? And it just doesn't matter. And I mean, I got to go with pizza. I know that's probably not.
Oh man, I love pizza.
But I can just, it doesn't matter. It makes me sick the next day half the time, but I eat so much of it and then I can't stop. So I think I could get away with pizza for the rest of my life.
All right, that's good. That's good. Cause I'm going to throw Kate under the bus a little bit. Kate was going to eat a salad for the rest of her life. I was like, Kate,
oh, come on.
You're on
Kate.
an island. You can eat pizza and just run around the island extra and still stay fit.
Yeah, right.
Right, there's ways to work it off. I was like, a salad? All right, it's your island, but I don't want to get stranded on your island. Like, I'm going to Cole's island.
Don't invite me. Yeah, don't invite me to Kate's island.
All right, Cole, you get a superpower. What superpower would it be and why would you want it?
Superpower. Man, there was someone that I just listened to and they had a really good one. And I would love to steal it right now. I think being able to teleport to different places, like just, oh, I want to go up to see Jerrod today up in South Dakota. And then bam, I'm there. I like traveling. So just being able to like cut out all the in-betweens and get to the locations I want to see that are on my bucket list and just get back get back to work.
Nice. That's a good one. All right. What book are you currently reading?
Oh man, I started a few probably, I don't know, probably 2-3 weeks ago and haven't got into it again, but I'm currently reading Rowdy Piper. It's actually pretty cool. So it's a book that he started before he died. If you guys don't know who that is, he was a professional wrestler.
Oh yeah, Roddy Piper. I remember him because he broke my heart when he smashed Jimmy Superfly Snuka with a banana way back in the day. Broke my heart.
Yeah. So he actually started writing his own book prior to him dying, and then his kids ended up picking it up and like went and interviewed all these different people and told their sides of the story. And so I'm just barely into it, but it's pretty good so far. I like it.
All right. Favorite book of all time.
Oh man. Favorite book of all time. Those are tough. What has been a good one? I'm really bad at the favorites game because I'm like, yeah, it depends where I was at mentally.
All right. What's one you go to and you've read multiple times? Your most read book then?
Well, so I got a problem with that too. So I once or twice or 3 times have ordered stacks of books, and so I have them all in a corner and I haven't read them yet. So trying to go back to a book is not in my. I won't be able to do that for the next like 10 years because I have too many books to read. So I haven't done a ton of going back to old books. Pretty sure Danielle might want to kill me. But yeah, so I'm trying to think what was one of the really good ones I read. Actually, I'll take it back. It was just a book that I read right before Piper I read Nitro, which was all about, probably not my favorite book, but this is the most recent one that was a lot of fun to read. It was about professional wrestling, WCW, and like how they climbed the ladder so fast and were like beating WWF at the time.
Yeah.
And then how all that, it was actually very interesting just to see the business side of things and like hear some of the backstories at the time of like what was going on. And, a lot of it's like leadership and where some of the faults were, while one guy was doing a really good job on certain parts, he was failing in other parts. And then that ultimately made it collapse. So it was just very interesting to like jump back into my childhood and read about some of that stuff and then realize like all the chaos that was going on behind it.
Yeah, that's good. It's always interesting to hear the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
All right. You get dinner with somebody either dead or alive. Who is it you want to have dinner with, and what would you want to ask them?
These are so stressful. Man, there's just so many. Because if you're gonna do this right, you gotta do it right. You gotta like pick the right person. Oh man. Um, I think at this stage, I think I might go back to one of my great grandpas. Either one would be great. But my great grandpa Earl, I think he had a lot of stories to tell, but I was just too young at the time to draw, to really have those conversations with him.
Sure.
Because he was some type of a medic in the army. I think the army, I'm not sure, in the military, and just little stuff like that. Just get to learn more about him and what he was all about, because he ended up, as he got older, he got into woodworking, and he was very, very, very talented. He he could do like wood carvings, and that kind of stuff. So I would just be curious, like how he ever got into that and what inspired some of that. Because then my grandpa does some of that, but I don't know if, I mean, he does it very, very well too. But I don't know if he ever reached quite the level that my great grandpa did. But still, it's just a cool kind of family thing that I'm definitely not at their level by any means, but something that I strive to want to do. But to hear kind of how they got there would be fun.
Oh, very good. Very good. Great grandpa Earl, I bet there would be some awesome stories there.
Yeah, and what's actually funny? I brought this up with my grandpa one time, and I said, "Yeah, man, Grandpa Earl, he was a pretty good fisherman. Like, I went fishing with him a few times. Like, I just sent a picture the other day to my grandpa of me and Grandpa Earl fishing, and and my grandpa laughed, and he was like, 'You thought he was a good fisherman?' I was like, I don't know. I didn't know any different. I felt like we caught fish when I was with him. He was like, that guy didn't know anything about fishing other than put a worm on a hook and throw it in the water."
Yeah, that's that relationship though, right? It's just that time being
Yeah.
together. All right.
Yep. Yeah. It's just funny.
I got a bonus one for you because I knew you were going to bring up some fake wrestling on here. What
All right.
what would be your nickname if you got to be a WWE
Oh,
superstar?
yeah. Yeah.
I know
big.
you've thought of this before. You've probably practiced like entering the ring yourself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's been, I think I would still, like, if I had the opportunity, I would probably still do like if the police department was like, instead of guns versus hoses, we did like a professional wrestling thing. I think I would totally do that. I would jump in and be the star of that. But I've definitely thought about entrance stuff. Man, like Big Boss Man's already got the cop thing down, so that's tough.
And for all
Yeah, I
those in
don't.
our community that don't follow fake wrestling, I apologize for this part, but it's good stuff. So get out there and look up, Google Rowdy Roddy Piper, Big Boss Man, and Cole, what's your nickname?
Oh man, my nickname. My my friends have just been calling me Officer Z lately, which I think could
Nah,
stick. I think I could play that up, but
nah, I
I don't
got
know
one.
if I.
I
What
got
would you
one
got?
for you, dude.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please get up out of your seats. Here he comes, Cole, the Flying Tiger Zempel. Because you fucking go so fast everywhere. You're always on the move. You're the Flying Tiger. I might even make you wear a mask, dude. You might even be a
Yeah.
masked guy.
Those guys. I wasn't always a big fan of them. Like I respected them because they were always flying around the ring, but I
Now
was
that's
always like,
you, dude.
damn,
You're a
damn, dude, take
flyer.
the mask off. Yeah, I probably would. I would probably be a spaz
And I would
inside the
make
ring.
sure your like signature move would have to come off the top turnbuckle.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I might combine Hulk Hogan's leg drop finish and Macho Man's flying elbow
Oh
and
yeah.
drop a flying leg drop from the top rope. I think.
Oh, that'd be good. That's it. That's what I'm calling you, the Flying Tiger from now on. You're Cole, the
All
Flying
right,
Tiger Simple. All right, you're
there
warmed
we
up,
go.
brother. I love it. How you feeling? Warmed up? You good to go?
Yeah, I think so. I'm loose.
I guarantee our community has heard more about fake wrestling in these first 10 minutes than they have probably in most of their lives, but that's all right. They'll all be better for it because we're here to learn anyhow.
That's right.
All right. For those of you that don't know, Cole's real job is he's a police officer. And a lot of this other stuff is all side stuff. And that's really what I wanted to start the show with, Cole, is What is it in you that makes you want to be and do more than 90% of the people in your profession? Where does that come from? Has it always been there, and what do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it's probably always been there to a degree. I don't know. Just I'm when I see something and I want to do it, then I'm pretty well all in. And I think some of that stems from when my mom, when I was little, like she would say, "Hey, if you do something, you finish it out. Like you don't ever quit, and you do it right." Like I remember in sixth grade, um, we had to be in choir for like first semester or something like that. It was mandatory. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. I can't wait to semester be done. Then I'm not doing it again. And she's like, oh no, you started it. You finish out the year. And I was like, what? I was like, it's optional after first semester. And she was like, nope, you started it, you finish it. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You know, so I think some of it's that. And I think the extra piece, obviously for my wrestling background, I mean, if you weren't doing something extra, you probably weren't one of the better guys in the room. So kind of learned I had to do some of that stuff. And then quite honestly, just the profession, law enforcement in general. I read, what's the book that everyone always has to read? The handout in the academy. You know what I'm talking about.
Shoot, Grossman's book.
No, it's all about like just balance in life and regardless. So I read that book right away, which I don't think a lot of people do, but I was like, okay, I'll read this book. Doesn't look very long.
You didn't put it right in your pile.
Yeah, I didn't go in my pile. I could read that one real quick. But anyways, I read about that and just I was like, man, I don't want to be that guy that comes home and checks out on his family or checks out on his friends. I want to be present with those people because those are the important people. So I've always just like had that kind of in the back of my mind too of like, hey, I've got to have something else that I can go to kind of lift me up. And what I've always I don't think I realized this until probably college, and even actually probably 2 or 3 years into college wrestling was um, like the wrestling room was a place that I could literally let go of everything. Like it didn't matter what was kind of really going on. I could just I could tune it out for that 2 hours or 2.5 hours, whatever it was. And I could just focus on getting better and working out with, my buddies. And so I think that's where there's different pieces and parts to all that. But I think a lot of it, starts with my mom. And then piece of it was just finding like the wrestling room is almost a sanctuary for me to kind of let go and forget about all the worries and just focus on working out with my teammates. And now it's focusing on these kids and helping them chase down their dreams.
Yeah, let's talk about that college wrestling experience because that's one of the aspects of your life that I've always really respected is, correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't make the lineup much.
No, not much at all.
Right. And for those of you that don't know college wrestling, what's college got now? 8, 10 weight classes?
10.
10 weight classes. So there's 10 guys on the team that are going to compete every tournament or every big dual meet. But the rest of the guys are necessary to practice. Like each one of those guys has to have a practice partner and multiple. And that's probably the grindiest thing you could ever do is being there practicing every day, getting beat up and physically pushed, knowing you're not going to compete that week.
Yeah, and I mean we had a fair amount of being in Iowa. We had a fair amount of open tournaments. What people don't realize about that though is like you're like, oh, it's an open tournament, so it's like the JV thing. In some regards, yes, it is. But a lot of regards, like everyone's sending their backups. So University of Iowa, University of Minnesota, Oklahoma State, like they're sending their backups there, and those guys are all multiple time state champions, in high school, and so you'd run into some just like you might not even remember their name anymore, but back then they were a name to know, and you would run into them at these opens, and you're like, well, I just got smoked at this this open in Dubuque, Iowa, that no one's going to hear about. But yeah, that piece was, I started at a Division III school, wrestled for Mark Schwab, and then him and his brother actually ultimately ended up at Northern Iowa, but they weren't there when I was there. So I went to D3 school in Western Iowa for a year. And, I came from a small town, but I just kind of quickly realized that it was even coming from a small town, going to a small D3 school was too small for me. So I wanted to do some different things. And honestly, I wasn't even sure if I was going to wrestle, but I specifically remember watching nationals that year. And I was like, nah, I can't hang it up. Like I still got a shot at this thing, got plenty of time. So I knew I was going to UNI already, University of Northern Iowa. And I ended up emailing the head coach and I was like, hey, will you accept any are you accepting walk-ons or how does that work? And he was like, yeah, show up to camp in July.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, here we go. And so that's kind of how I got started. And yeah, it's interesting. Like I'm sure a lot of people will tell you this, especially at Division I schools, but I think when when I was at Northern Iowa, like talent level wise, I don't know if there was honestly, many places that could beat us. Now, culture wise, and some of the other things that we were doing, probably wasn't at the level it needed. Obviously, wasn't at the level it needed to be. But I would think it was my first year there. They had a recruiting class that was, I think, number 3 in the country, and those guys were they were every bit of talent, as much talent as you could ever want in an
Sure.
athlete, but maybe not doing all the right things. But yeah, I was the backup behind. Honestly, I was at 141 pounds, 149 pounds, and we had, I felt like half our team was at those two weights. Um, so, there's points in time that like I felt like I was like fifth string because there was just so many guys that we had that were kind of bouncing between both of those weights. And I'd always make weight certification at 141 just in case. And I'd wrestle it for like one tournament maybe. And I was like, the heck with this. If I'm not if I'm not varsity, I am not sucking this much weight. So I would go up to 149 and finish out the year there.
What do you, if you look back at I just did an episode actually, I think it airs the week before yours, maybe 2 weeks ago, about your future self and stopping to think about how's this decision I'm about to make or this decision I'm about to not make going to impact my future self, right? And try to,
Yeah.
instead of looking at our past, look to, okay, would my future self be proud of what I'm about to do? Would this benefit them in some way? But now I want to flip that for you, and I want you to actually go past and talk to me about what skills, characteristics, and life lessons did you learn going through that grind to be in the fifth stringer and the backup to the backup that you couldn't have learned any other way, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I mean, it honestly starts, like I said, I was at Division III school, and I was probably in line the next year to possibly be a starter, and left that because I just didn't, I don't know. There was just something there that I was like, yeah, this isn't the place. And so I go to Northern Iowa, and my first year there was rough, like really, really rough. And it wasn't just the wrestling. I mean, there was a bunch of life stuff going on. Actually, my grandpa Earl, that's when he died. And there was a couple other things going on all at the same time. And then on top of that, I'm going to wrestling practice and getting the holy hell kicked out of me. Um, where you're getting smothered into the mat. Yeah, I think I'm like, gosh, what was it that like, I actually ended up quitting for a little while. Or for, a chunk of the season, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And I look back and I'm like, it was so dumb. I literally went through the hardest part of the season in college wrestling from October until November, or even before that, is your preseason, and you are training super hard at that time. So I made it through all that, got to like the first competition, and I was like, I can't do this. Wrestling was kind of the only thing I could put to the side because everything else was just life stuff that wasn't going to go away. And so I made a decision to quit. And again, it was like watched some wrestling throughout the year, and then I watched nationals again. I was like, what the heck am I doing? So I came back, crawling back, and I was like, hey, can I come back out? And they're like, yep, sure. And that was kind of the end of the conversation. I even tried to explain myself, and that was also a teaching moment for me now as a coach. But
What'd you learn from that short conversation?
I was just like, I was literally ready to like tell them like, hey, there's some stuff going on with my dad, my stepdad, my grandpa, my girlfriend at the time. And he was just like, and I don't think he meant it in a bad way, but he was just like, no, I figured some stuff was going on. You're good. Just get back in the room. And I was like, oh, okay. And so, like it was just like to me, like I was ready and I probably needed to tell somebody else,
Okay.
and kind of share that and let that weight off of like, hey, I wasn't just being a bum and quitting because I was getting my butt kicked in the wrestling room. Like I had all these other things going on and I want you guys to understand me better. Um, but I wasn't really offered that opportunity. It was just, okay, cool, you're back. Get back in the room and help the guys out essentially. So, um, yeah, so that piece, like when I came back, there's definitely a shift for me. Like when I first got there, I don't know what it was, but I was struggling for sure. And again, a lot of that's probably just getting beat on at that kind of level.
Yeah.
Like dudes, I mean, I remember at that camp, he was the same age as me. We actually wrestled growing up a little bit. And the first camp, he literally like sat on my ankle, which people that wrestled will understand this. He like sat on my ankle, had a tight waist, and literally just put his forearm in the back of my head, and I couldn't get off the mat. Like for like we went like a 10-minute go, and I'm just sitting. I'm like, I can't get up, I can't move, I don't know what's going on. And he thought it was the funniest thing ever. He was literally like laughing at me. He's like, "Come on, Cole, get up." And I'm like, Nick, I want to punch you in the face, but I can't because my head's stuck on the mat.
Yeah.
So I think yeah. There was so that piece. So when I come back after I quit, I come back and I think I was kind of reinvigorated a little bit to just be like, you only get so much time to do this, and I don't know if I would have been able to tell you this at the time, but I think I had a little bit of that. Hey, when I'm done, when I go off into adulthood for real, when I look back, am I going to be happy with what I did? And I think that was a big driving force for me to finish out what I was doing. And it just, man, you just create such, when you work that hard, you create such big, like long lasting relationships with people. Like we've got a group, there's 5 or 6 of us that are in this text message group, right? And we text each other all day long. And it's those guys, it was my workout partners. It was just guys I was hanging out with on the team a lot. And we just created a lifelong bond through that. And so that was the cool part. And like I said, I think a lot of it, I don't know if I could have put it into words at the time, but I think I would have said, I need to finish this out because I don't want to have any regrets. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how I try to live.
Yeah, that's good. And I was literally the next time I was going to talk to you about what I was going to ask you about is the relationships, and you hit on it. And I think too many times, if we're not the best at something, or we're not going to be the star at something, we'll just won't do it. We'll go try to find something else, and we miss out on that bond that comes from that you can only get when you're in a struggle with other people.
Yeah.
Right, and it's that's so huge there. What would you say are 2 life traits or personality traits that you've developed now as an adult that came directly from that time on the mats?
Yeah. I think just being a lifelong learner and trying to, I was 5th, 6th string. So it's not like I'm getting a lot of coaching attention. Right. So my practice partners were getting attention. So I had to like learn watching them get taught. Does that make sense? Right. Like
Yeah.
I'm watching them get taught some things, and then I'd have to learn. If I wanted to get any better, I had to watch them do that to try to pick it up. And so I think just trying to continue to learn and continue to train at a high level, because I didn't always train at a high level. Even into my last year at college, there was times doing stupid stuff, partying too much, and so that will always be a little bit of that. Hey, did I do enough, or should I have done a little bit more? There'll always be that little bit of that question.
Yeah.
But but I think it taught me a lot of lessons too. Like you're saying, it just taught me how to lifelong learn, keep training, and I think it is the relationships piece. Like I think, like when you're on a team, like you should care about each other and work together. And again, even if you're not the star, you're helping your partners. Like one of my buddies, I actually found out that he was talking smack about me when I quit. And then when I came back, I was like, I'm going to choke him out. I was like, he looks like a nerd. He's got dorky little glasses. I haven't even seen him wrestle when I was in there. Well, come to find out, he was like a Greco national, multi-time Greco national champion in high school. And so, the first couple times we locked up, needless to say, my feet were in the air. And so, but but like, so I was mad at him at first, and I wanted to like, I was like, man, I'm just going to choke him out. I don't care about wrestling him. I'm just going to try to prove my point. And, well, now he's like one of my best friends, and we developed that by just like, I think, I've never had this personal conversation with him, but I think he liked warming up with me. He liked, like I was able to just get him ready.
Yeah.
And some of those things that can't go understated, right? Like,
No.
because if you have a bad partner, whether it's in, I don't care what sport, like if you don't have a good partner to warm up with, it can totally screw up your competition. So, I always took some pride in that he like would ask me to be his partner to actually get warmed up and do those things. And I always thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's your contribution to the team, right? And then you're
Right.
connected to his actual performance. And I think honestly, what you're saying, it leads to the next thing I really want to talk about, and that is sometimes the guys that aren't the stars of the teams, the ones that don't get all the attention from the coaches, the ones that have to know every detail of the technique to make the technique work, because maybe they're not the most athletic or the biggest or the strongest, become the best coaches because they have so much technical knowledge. They required so much technique to make things work. So how has that impacted you as a coach?
It's crazy. Yeah, it's a lot. I've had conversations with my friend group. None of us were, well, one of us was an All-American. The rest of us were all in the lineup. That my friends were probably in the lineup more than me. Definitely were, but like none of us were like these world beaters, right? And now we're all coaching. One's a Division III coach, head coach. One's a D1 assistant coach. One's a high school head coach. One's running a club that's one of the best in Iowa right now, probably one of the better ones in the nation. So, and for all of us, like it was a little bit of that to different degrees, and for me, I just had a conversation with my assistant coaches, and one of them was like, man, you break the technique down like more than I've seen probably ever, and I was like, well, it came back to, again, I had to watch other people get coached to pick up on techniques.
Right.
Um and I was like, that's a piece of it for sure. And I think sometimes in wrestling, I think we do ourselves a disservice. And this is the conversation with my friends that are all coaching, is we think that everyone has to be a national champion to coach at the college level. Like that's what universities are looking for, is to hire the next national champion. And yes, a lot of those guys do well, but a lot of them don't know how to teach it necessarily, because they're like, I just did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
and and if you go to enough camps, you'll see that. You'll see some guys that actually know the technique, and then you'll see some guys that are like, no, I was gifted, right? Like I had a feel. I did
Yeah.
this or did that, and I just got there.
Yeah. I don't even
And
know how I
you
did
can
it.
just tell the difference. So yeah, I think it does play a role in just like you had to learn, like you said, learn the technique, learn the intricacies of, hey, if I move my foot this much further over, what does that do for me? If I put my shoulder here, does that allow me to get up? Just little things like that. And I think, and some of it too is just back to even dating back to my high school days. Like and it still is to some degree, like we were a grinder, old school. We're going to wear you out and just beat you up and wear you out. And I look back and I'm like, oh man, I think there's some missed opportunities there. Like, I don't think anyone was in better condition than me, but like those top guys were still beating me,
Yeah.
no matter how tired I got them. And me going back and running some more didn't necessarily fix that.
Yeah.
so, so I think some of it's that too. It's just like, man, I don't want kids to feel that. Like you can always run some more, do some extra conditioning, but the work is the technique.
Yeah. So what brought you to coaching, and did you always know it'd be such a big part of your life?
I didn't know for sure. It's weird. I mean, I say that, but then literally the very first job I applied to, so I graduated from Northern Iowa, moved west like 2 days later, which broke my mom's heart. Um, but then, so I moved west, and my stepsister lived in Cheyenne, and she was like, "Yeah, you can hang out for like a month if you want to." Well, like 2 weeks into it, I'm already getting scratchy to do something. So I start kind of looking around for jobs, and I see, hey, Cheyenne, a couple of high schools are looking for coaches. So I put in for one or two of them, and and I got a, ended up coaching right away. I mean, that was like I said, that was technically the first job I had. And so while I didn't know necessarily, like once I sat around for little while, like I immediately jumped into it. And so I don't know if there was a lot of thought process. It was just something that I kind of had a calling for. And then as I continued to do it, I still can think of kids that I coached on those Cheyenne Central teams. I was primarily working with the JV kids at that time, and just seeing some of those kids' development and seeing where they started and where we could get them. I was like, you know what? I think this is something I could do. And then fortunately, when I came down to Fort Collins, it just kind of got bigger and bigger. Partially thanks to you getting me involved over at Rocky Mountain High School before I was even hired officially. I think we we met at a duel, and I remember going, "Oh man, these Colorado folks need some help." So I think I could probably help them out.
Yeah, that's right. That's how that story went.
Yeah. So no, yeah, it was. I think again, I don't know if it was a conscious like, hey, like I was going to be a coach right out of college. It just kind of happened, and it was just a natural kind of progression. And the more I did it, the more I liked it, the more I saw. Being in Colorado, I've gotten to work with some very high end kids. And I always say like we joke around, as coaches, or some of us do, some of us take it seriously, I guess, but like you claim kids like, oh, I coached that kid, blah, blah, blah. But I would say like, man, I had the honor of coaching those kids. Like I've been around I say better. I've been around. Take like a Bryce Meredith, you take a Jacob Greenwood. Both were 4-timers in their states respectively as high school kids, but very very different wrestlers and very different approaches to how they just handled themselves in a lot of ways. But then in a lot of ways they're very very similar.
Yeah.
So being able to see some of that stuff with two very different personalities and being able to be like, wow, this is how he got there. This is how he did it. And then this is how he did it. And so for me, it's like, hey, yes, there's some baseline skills, some baseline ways of doing things that everyone can do, but then everyone needs a little different twist, a little different approach to everything to make it their own, to make it fun and make it enjoyable for them.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. Being able to bring that individual attention, I think, is critical, right? Because I think you'd probably agree that from your time as a young wrestler, even high school and maybe early college, there was much less emphasis put on the relationships we were developing than there is today.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I mean, I came and I hope my coaches, if they listen to this, don't get too mad at me. But yeah, like we were, like I said, in high school, we were just as old school as it gets. Like we'd run every day after practice. We did morning workouts. We were running, and I'm like, yeah, running was good, and we were tough as nails. Like we were tougher than anybody. Like you couldn't necessarily break a lot of our guys in a conditioning piece, but like we were probably missing out on some of the technical components. And I think there's there's some exceptions as always, the Danny Murphys of the world, or some of those kids where they can push and push and push, and that's what they love is that push. But I think everyone has most 99% of people have a limit.
Yeah.
And then once you hit that limit, now we got to find ways to continue to get better. And we got to implement some fun in there to make, and everyone's fun's different. So that's the kind of the beauty of it. I've told our guys already, I said, hey, eventually I want to be able to come in here and say, hey, spar, like have some fun, just roll around and figure stuff out. And we do that for 30 minutes at a time. We're not there right now, but that's stuff that I want to implement with them, because I think it allows the creative piece, right? I think in older generations of sports, it's all about discipline. It's all about discipline. It's all about discipline, and listening to your coach, right? Where now, like, I think kids are having a little bit more fun with sports in some senses because they just provided that creativity,
Sure.
to go out there and kind of be their own person and try their own stuff.
Okay. Is the first coach in the history of a new high school and getting to build a program from scratch. I want you to share with us what you're doing to create the kind of culture that builds the legacy you're hoping to have there.
Yeah. I hope I'm answering all your questions. I don't know if
You
I've
answer
answered
them
any of them
all.
to this point. I don't know if I've answered any of them to
You're
this
good.
point,
I'll
but
ask again if
this,
I need to.
yeah, this one, yeah. So I've always, there was actually there's a few years there where I was like, you know what, assistant club coach is exactly where I want to be. I don't have to deal with much of anything. I can literally come in, teach wrestling, coach wrestling, and I get to leave. Like I don't
Right.
have to deal with any of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I don't know, probably over the last five-ish years, I'll say COVID made it weird. But probably over the last 5 years, I started getting kind of this scratch, like you need to try it. You need to try it. And so I kind of knew that Wellington and this other school down the road were going to be opening brand new high schools. And so I kind of had my eye on those and I just started taking notes. Um, some of my own stuff, but then stuff I've heard from other coaches on just how to build programs and how they're finding success. And so by the time this position actually came open, I had like 2 or 3 pages of notes of just like different ideas and different ways I wanted to do things. And so for me, I thought that was super important because again, you are there to because there was probably opportunities for me to take some other high school head coaching jobs or at least put in for them and have a pretty good shot at them. And some of those I was like, yeah, that'd be fun. But what would be really fun is to be able to set the blueprint. You don't have to
Yes.
change a culture, you set the culture.
Yeah.
Um, and you can't blame anybody, right? Like that's part of it too. Like I don't want to be able to like, oh well, the old coach used to do this, and I can't get the guys to stop doing what the old coach was doing, right? Like this is 100% on me.
Right.
So that's a piece of it. I think that's probably one of the more exciting pieces. Is just I knew Wellington was going to be a place where wrestling was going to be important, and so that's huge for me as well. And a piece of that's I gotta follow up to make it continue to be important, and it's just going to be down to the relationships and being a part of the community. I've already seen, just in my short time over this summer of getting involved and being around the people, like these people want to attach to something. They want to be a part of it. And,
Sure.
and so you've got to provide those opportunities for them to be engaged and be involved. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of that right now. And I brought in, you know, I've said it on multiple occasions now. I didn't know my head assistant at all. Assistance was something I was always worried about because again, culture setting, you
Yeah.
got to have assistants that are bought into what you're saying and kind of doing the same things. And so I got the position, and a couple people were floating some names around to me, and this Andy was kept getting brought up, and I was like, okay, I don't know anything about this. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
You tell me he's good, but I've never seen him coach or anything. So ultimately, do an interview with him, and I get some more background info from other people that know him a little better. And I was like, all right, we're bringing him on. And man, he has been so he's a horseshoer, so he's a farrier actually. He he's old school blue collar guy, right? From Wisconsin. He's actually a pretty high level wrestler, I think, through high school, and then decided to move out here right out of I think it's pretty much right out of high school, if I remember his story right. But anyways, he's just been all in. Like we're doing morning workouts at 6 a.m. and he's been to all of them. And that just having that was like a huge relief for me. And I think he's been working with our middle school program the last couple of years, and that's helped mend some of those relationships and build some of those relationships because he already has them. Like people are like, oh, Andy's awesome. Like the community loves him as a coach. And so once he got brought on, then I think that bridged the gap for the community and me to say, oh, this guy must be all right if Andy's coaching with
Sure.
him and that kind of thing.
You built off his trust with them right away.
Yeah. Yes. And that was kind of it wasn't something I did intentional. It was just something that
Yeah.
happened and I happened to pick the right guy. So that's been great. And going forward, we just, like we already did a camp. I'm trying to put things out there on social media so parents just can see all the little things that we're doing, whether it's, I was designing singlets for like hours on end and I finally picked some. And so I sent that out and just having that constant communication. So they, again,
Sure.
feel like they're a part of it.
So tell me this. So you Coach Cole now. You're the man. You get that kid that comes out his freshman year and quits and goes home halfway through the season, and he has to come back his sophomore year. What's that conversation going to look like from you to him that you didn't have when you came back in college?
Yeah, I mean, figuring out why he wants to come back, and I think it's got to be a little bit of a balance of what they want to share and what they're willing to share. But just having that conversation, like, hey, was it the wrestling? Was there something extra going on? Is there something I need to know about so that we can help you stay engaged and stay a part of this team? And that's a big thing that I've, as we're getting closer to the season, like I have to put a handbook together, right? With team rules and all that kind of stuff. And I was talking to my assistants about it the other night, and they both were like, yeah, I don't know if we need to like do anything extra than what CHASA and PSD, the school
Yeah,
district have in place. Like, if they're a part of this team, they're a part of this team. They might not compete sometimes because if they get in trouble or do certain things, right, to violate those rules. But like, let's keep them on the team the best we can, so that if there is a kid that is struggling with something, whether it's at home or a girlfriend or, whatever their situation is, that they have that place. And, I hope that I can make the wrestling room a place where it's their sanctuary, where they can come and they
sure.
can forget about the noise outside. And, to circle back is, so when you have that conversation, like, hey, how can I better make this a place for you to let go and be comfortable and feel safe here, and and just want to work, and be a part of this team. And I think that's the big thing that I hope to build, because those, right, like it's I always say this, like, again, the Danny Murphys, the Jacob Greenwoods, Bryce Meredith, all those three names, so to speak, that I've coached, those, anyone can really coach those kids, right? Like,
Yeah.
those guys are all kind of already got their own things going. It's those kids that are on the fringes that we want to suck in and say, hey, get in wrestling, get in whatever sport, whatever activity, get involved in this so that you don't go down the wrong path. And let's help you build your self-esteem, build your confidence, give you the skills to be better, as you mature and become an adult.
That's one of my favorite things about the sport of wrestling is it's literally for everybody, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's be honest. In basketball, if you're not 6'8" and can jump out of the gym, you're probably not going very far. In football, if you're
Right.
not one of the biggest guys in the building, you're not going for. But wrestling is based on size and weight
Yeah.
classes, so there's a place for everybody. So talk to me, Cole. How do you get the younger generation to trust you? How do you build that trust to where they not only want to work hard for you as a wrestler, but you're able to shape them into the young men and women that they deserve to become? How do you build that trust?
For me, it's just, I mean, you gotta show some excitement for what you do, I think. Like right now in these off-season workouts, they haven't got the full effects of Coach Cole yet. But but like, I think it's, you got to share that excitement with them, and then you also got to, on the flip side, you got to share your vulnerabilities. You got to be vulnerable with them, like, tell them the stories about how I quit, tell them about the stories where I wanted to quit and didn't, or whatever life circumstances are going on for these guys. Just trying to share some of those stories with them, and again, it makes it a safe environment for them. If I'm the head coach and I'm sharing these things that are pretty sensitive, then other guys start sharing, whether it's my coaches or whether it's some of the older guys on the team. And then that just trickles down, and we're all sharing information, sharing our stories, and then we all can know each other better. And that's where relationships get stronger, is when you actually know something about somebody. And um, that's where I want to go. I want it to be where guys they call up years down the road and they're like, hey, can we come back in the room to help out the next kids? Or, hey, I'm on college break. Like, I just want to come in, and even though I'm not wrestling anymore, I just want to come in and wrestle again, like,
Yeah,
create lifelong fans of the sport, and specifically of Wellington wrestling, right?
yeah. I love that, and I think you're on the right track, and I think you're gonna make a fantastic program. And I think it boils down to realizing that winning isn't the most important thing that we're after with young men and women at this age, right? It's their character development and their personality development, and who they will become down the road. Of course, winning feels better for sure,
Yeah.
but losing and how we lose and handling losing is just such an important part of wrestling. It's such an important part of life that they don't get many other places anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had a conversation today with another officer that did a little, he's done some grappling and he was mainly a runner, but we were just talking about how like we probably had an unhealthy relationship with sports at different points in time in our careers because like just so focused on winning. And if we didn't win, then we were grumpy and depressed and, just all these things. Because if we didn't win, it wasn't worth our time, or
Sure.
we failed, totally failed, and that's not always the case. You can lose, but still make progress.
Absolutely. And I think that's something important for you to remember in your journey as a coach, so you don't get too hard on yourself if there's lumps in that first year, right? Give yourself grace, but
Yeah,
also to really share with your young student athletes is that very few kids are going to be undefeated every year forever, and nobody's
right.
undefeated in life,
Yep. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
how they handle that. Um, how are you balancing everything? Talk to me about your balance. Because that's a
Yeah,
lot, right? You're a full time police officer and now a head coach of a developing program. How are you handling your balance stuff?
yeah. I think it just comes down to like it's definitely getting busier, and we're still not even into the busy part of the season, right? So just when I'm home, I really think about like, oh, like tomorrow night I'm not going to be home, so I need to spend as much time with Ava and Danielle as I can, right? And actually hang out with them and play with them and um, have conversations with my wife, right? Like do all those things, be very intentional in that time that we have to make it better. Um, or like if you're around someone a long period of time, sometimes we tend to kind of we're present, but we're not present. Like we're around each other, but we're not necessarily present in that moment. So just trying to be a little more present when I am home, and just honestly, I want them to be involved in it too. Like, because I told my wife before I even applied, I said, hey, you realize this is going to be a part of you as well. Like it
For
won't work
sure.
if you're not. And so like different parts that you want to be involved in or don't want to be involved in, like, but there's got to be something that that you want to do, because otherwise again it
Right.
won't work if you're not a part of that. And so just little things like them coming to the camp for a little while and Ava getting run around on the mats with all the kids, and again I think that brings back to the relationship piece with that you just asked about before.
Right.
They see me playing with my kid on the mats. I'm still holding her and talking to her. Like I take time to talk to her while this wrestling stuff's going on. Like it's okay to take a break. There's things that are more important than
Yeah.
wrestling. So that's the biggest thing that I'm trying to do right now. And I was just thinking the other day, I was like, we need to find like a family activity that we do every Sunday or something when there isn't wrestling going on, so that we're making sure that we're taking time just for us.
What about this, Cole? Can we
Yeah.
introduce a gratitude practice to the Wellington High School wrestling room?
Yeah. I would love it. All right, dude. Yeah, that's great.
Right? Like, think about it. Like, we're talking about culture and like appreciating each other and appreciate stuff, but as men, which wrestling's primarily men, I know there's women wrestling now and they're tough as well, but the majority of wrestling rooms are going to be men. One of the things we're not really good about is talking about how we appreciate each other and how we respect one another and that we're thankful for those moments with one another. Yet, just hearing those words is what builds value, right? Like you mentioned earlier, just knowing that your guy wanted to warm up with you before his big match gave you a sense of value.
Yeah.
What if we shared that more frequently? What if, the kid that fifth string is a ninth grader with acne and all kinds of doubts about who the hell he's going to be actually heard from the state champion that, hey, I'm grateful that Jimmy's in here today because I love the way he freaking combs his hair or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that, and like you were saying earlier, you can run so much, you can do so many pull-ups and so many push-ups, but at some point you hit a point where those don't make you better.
Yep.
And when we reach that point, we got to quit looking at the physical and look to the mental, the spiritual side. Right? And for a lot
Yeah.
of young people, it's the belief in themselves, the feeling of value. And that's the place where I think you're going to do a fantastic job, because Cole, you're a great mentor to young people. And you're going to have them for 4 years to really shape not only how they think about themselves, but how they're going to think about others, and how they're going to interact together. And that what they can learn from you in that situation is far beyond wins and losses on mats.
Yeah, that's actually, I don't know if funny is the right word, but just it's actually an FCA Fellowship of Christian Athletes like breakfast, right? And I've never been to one, never been to any of their events before, but I was like, I'm gonna go see what they have to say. And I was able to stay for the first coach, and she's the head soccer coach for Colorado State, and she talked about like 5 different things that she was doing with her players. And this is only, I think, the start of year 2, if I remember right, of her being there as the head coach. But one of the things was, she called it depositing tokens. And so they would take something and they would do exactly what you're saying. They would say, hey, Johnny did this really good, or Billy looked really good today. Some
Yeah.
sort of compliment to a teammate in the room, and that token goes into the jar. And she's like, now imagine how full that jar is by the end of the year. Like, we're building upon it. Like, the jar gets bigger and bigger and bigger throughout a season, let alone 4 or 5 years of that.
Yeah. No,
So I just,
go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just going to say, I just think that's super valuable, and again, just establishing that culture and trying to build something bigger than your sport, of just like, these are going to be lifelong relationships pretty much regardless. Like, you are spending 4 and 5 years together, sometimes 6 years together, grinding it out and working super hard. And whether you like each other or not, you're together a lot. And so you're going to have a relationship with that person, good or bad, for a very, very long time.
Well, and then think about, now magnify that out for you, because you're going to have class after class, depending on how long you stay there.
Right.
Like, think about, somebody we both know, Coach Taylor, who's been coaching wrestling for, I don't know, 50 years. Imagine all the lives he's impacted.
Yeah. And in some ways, like, you'll never probably know once you're in that spot for sure. But, ultimately that's kind of the goal, right? Like, is to be in it a long time. And then whenever that time comes where you're not doing it anymore, that you can look back and say, man, we straightened, or helped straighten the path for a lot of people, to go on to do bigger and better things. And sometimes those bigger and better things aren't always what we see as bigger and better, but it's bigger and better for them. And that's, I always say that my goal is just to help people be bigger than their circumstances, right? And sometimes I think this is right, like, we always think, oh, it's got to be the kid that's had the rough life, and you help him get on track. Those are amazing moments, but living where we live, and just, I think, the times, like, sometimes it's, hey, this kid's got too much love at home. We need to give him a little bit more of some honest feedback of, hey, no, you aren't working hard enough. No, you aren't doing these things right. We still love you. We still care about you. But, like, sometimes it's some of that more in your face stuff that some kids need. Some kids get plenty of that at home, and they don't need any of that. And they just need the hugs, and told a good job. So that's my biggest goal, is just, like I said, to help as many people as I can become bigger than their circumstances, and see where that leads them in life.
No, I love it. And I don't think that necessarily has to apply to just coaches. I think that's a good goal for all of us as we go through life, is to make people around us better. Whether it's on the wrestling mat, through coaching, no matter where your circumstances in life take you, there's an opportunity to invest in others and make them better. And that's one of the things I admire about you, Cole, and I know you're going to do a fantastic job there. But before I wrap up and let you go, I want to put you on the spot here. Since you've been one of the original OPP community members from when we first started this thing, give me one thing you've learned from being part of this community.
Yeah, I think I go back to the vulnerability part. That wasn't always something, I always say the first time and probably the only time I ever saw my dad cry was the day my parents like officially, my mom moved out and from the divorce. And like, other than that, I don't think I ever really saw him get emotional and cry. So it wasn't something that I knew. My mom cried, but she's a mom, and that it was just different. It was just a different thing.
Right.
I guess a different piece for me, at least. So as a growing up, like I was just, I don't know. Like, I don't remember having enough of those conversations and I'm sure, again, this is me trying to look back and trying to remember, but like getting into some of these deeper conversations. And again, with your mom is one thing, but like to sit down with, whether it's your dad or just another adult male, as a male, to sit down and say, hey, this is something I struggled with, man. I know that's not the cool thing to say, but here's how I got through it. Being around like guys like you and I'll say the Al Browns of the world and Bill Greenwood. You guys are emotional beings as well. And I always have been, but I didn't necessarily know how to express that. It came out in different ways, different times, but being around some guys that aren't afraid to cry every once in a while and wipe those things off and, and be good about it.
There's onions in the room.
Yeah. Like it was just something I wasn't used to, and to be able to see that and be a part of that has been it's helped me grow a ton, I think. And so that's what I appreciate. And I think that you've done a good job in this community of just getting other people to do that, on whether it's on the podcast or whether it's other ventures that you've taken. You're always good at getting people to open up and share some of those deeper meanings and deeper thoughts and feelings.
Well, I appreciate that, Cole. We greatly value you as a member of our community, and we look forward to the success you're going to have. We didn't even get into your own podcast, which you started. So for community members that want some more wrestling with Cole Zempel, be sure to listen to Headlocks and Lateral Drops. It's available on all your major podcast platforms. And Cole, where else can our community go to connect with you, follow you, or shoot you some questions about anything they have going on?
Yeah, I mean, you can go follow Wellington Eagles Wrestling for sure. We're on Instagram and Facebook. But then, my personal stuff is just Headlock, the number 4, and Fun. That's where I post all my podcast stuff and other kind of coaching tidbits and things like that. Not necessarily tidbits for me, but just stuff that I like and I want to share with other people. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Twitter too. I know that's not a verse you're in yet, but Twitter's a world that I live in. I like following some of the sports people on there.
You do your thing, Cole, man. I don't want to limit you at all in my box of the world.
Yeah, that's right. No, yeah. So I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm very, very excited about coaching at Wellington and where we're going to take this thing. I have some pretty big visions, pretty big goals, and now I got to put my money where my mouth is.
I love it, Cole. You're going to be in a good spot. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, Cole.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy. And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.